Welcome back, everybody, to the Aaron's High Cap Adventure Radio program. Again, it's March 17th, 2018, and to my left, I have the attorney extraordinaire, Benton Ross Watson. To my front, we got Trey Wallace. We're going to have a little discussion here on due justice and why it is necessary. And we just started off, we started debating already. As an example, somebody murders somebody, we'll say, and it's there, crystal clear on video. You can't miss it. You can't deny it. Why do we have to do justice? So, with that topic start, Ross.
Well,
first of all, welcome to the show.
Yeah, it's glad to be back. Yeah, it's I had some issues, couple weekends in a row, but glad to be here. Happy and you'd asked me 2 weeks ago about this. Why the hell do we go through the process, the system, when you have somebody that gets on tape or is on tape or just confesses to doing whatever it is that the police said they did? And why do we waste our time and money and resources? And there's some truth to that. I guess there's an argument to why do we waste our time and money and resources and just string them up, and just take them like the posse would do back in the old days. Well, there's that's part of the reason why we do go through the process, because we're no longer a posse justice type of system. But there's several other reasons, and we can start with some of those. And I don't want to talk about any. I think the example I gave you, I don't want to talk about that on the air. So let's just change some names and some charges and things that we spoke about.
Okay.
But, there's been many different kinds of cases I've experienced in my own. Let's say you have somebody that's, driving with a possession of marijuana in the car, and the police, for some reason, see this person, and they clearly see the person driving around, and they have this person driving around for 10 minutes, and they see this person smoking marijuana. Well, what is it about the case? They got him on tape. It's no questions asked. You got him dead to rights. Why does Benton Watson still try the case?
That's a good question.
And I tell you, it's a loser, right?
I don't know.
And so in the case we talked about with you, I walked him, right? Walked him. Jury came back not guilty. And you're like, what? They got him on tape for 10 minutes breaking the law. Why does the jury come back not guilty? And we talked about that, right? I told you about some of the things the police officer did, like follow this individual around for over 60 minutes, over a 60-minute period. So you already had the police officer following him around way before the possession of marijuana. And then when he had the chance to arrest him, he didn't even arrest him right then. He took another call and then came back 30 minutes later when my client was out of the car, sitting in the front yard, and and then tries to arrest him. Yeah, that's not okay.
Explain why, though.
Because the Fourth Amendment has a you don't have a warrant. You don't have a warrant for somebody's arrest. That means you have to see a crime being committed in your presence. There's some kind of urgency and immediacy to it. Think about it. If I look at you, and the judges are all politically bound, so the judge didn't suppress the case, but he did let it go to the jury. Okay, so the judge's not going to throw it out because of the immediacy that the police officer is supposed to use, because he did do it the same day. But let's take it a step further. Let's say I see you run a stop sign today, and then tomorrow, right, when you're going to work, I pull you over and arrest you. That's not okay. That's unreasonable.
Okay.
Do you think that's reasonable?
No, I don't.
That's not reasonable. I mean, if you want to go get a warrant, that may be one thing. Go get a warrant and do it through the procedural process. It can give me some notice that, hey, I better not go to work, right? I better call my boss and tell him I'm calling in because I'm going to have to turn myself in.
How does that fit in with, like, traffic cameras? Reviewing that.
Well, how many cases have been overturned in Dallas and Houston because of those? Oh, a bunch. Hey,
can I interject with something here? Because I want to throw this into the mix, too. What if an attorney, any attorney, says, I know this guy's guilty, but are you going your obligation of making sure, even though you know he's guilty, to give him every possible right that he is allowed while still being guilty? Is that like a code of ethics?
Man, that busts open a whole Pandora's box. Yeah, but I'll just say this very quickly. Sometimes representing people's hard.
I can understand.
Okay. and
stuff is hard, man.
And no, I mean, it's hard. It's hard from a moral, internal,
that's what I'm asking. That's what I'm
personal
asking.
standpoint. It's also hard from.
Here's a perfect example. Somebody commits murder, and they want to save him from the the death chamber. Okay, the attorney knows he's guilty, so he's doing everything he possibly can or she possibly can to utilize the law to keep him from getting death as compared to life. So how does that work? How do you work that?
Hey, First John 2:1. We all have an advocate, right? Every one of us, right?
right.
In the last days, hopefully the worst of us are going to have an advocate. So if Jesus can advocate on our behalf, who am I to say that I can't advocate for somebody else?
Okay, that's powerful.
Yeah, that's pretty strong.
So I mean, if other than that fact, I still think that I have this just irritation to regulation and power and
Sign,
and government. And so even
Maybe that should be a song.
a lot of times it's not about what my client did. It's just making sure the government plays the game fair.
And I got no problem with that.
And so
If
sometimes
there's rules to the game, they should not be twisted or cheated or manipulated.
And right, so sometimes I can justify a lot of the things that I do, not even based on what my client, who he is, or what he did, or what she did, or what they're being accused of, but I don't even focus on them. My focus is look to the state and see what they're doing, and see if they're doing everything they're supposed to be doing.
So it's less about defending them and more about making sure they have a level playing field.
That's what I got from that. Yeah.
Yes, I'm saying that's sometimes I can do it that way without focusing on the
helps
client.
kind of get the
But it's not-
cognitive dissonance out of the way.
That more goes to pretrial. If you're trying a case like that, you want to know your client's story.
Because I know you
Okay.
mentioned a couple of times, sometimes you think you know a client's story and all of a sudden, where'd this come from, right?
Yeah. But that's gonna happen. I think almost. I mean, you can sit there and talk to your client for hours and hours and hours, and then you go to trial, and then something comes up, and you just look at him like, dude, you did not tell me that.
And that won't look good in court. either.
No.
I've always kind of wondered, is there some sort of ethical or moral obligation if you're told, as an officer of the court, if you're told, hey, yeah, I straight up murdered all 4 of those people.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
No, absolutely, I could not disclose that fact. There becomes an issue when, let's say, he tells me he murdered all 4 people, and then during the middle of the trial, he tells me he wants to get on the stand and say he was at Luby's in Arizona when it all happened. At that point, what do you do? Can you let him?
perjury
Because
still?
it's privilege. You can lose your license if you tell anybody that.
Wow. So what do you do?
But you
What do
also can't help stubborn perjury.
What do you do?
right.
Just walk off the case?
They've got several techniques. But they've got several techniques, so
Are
that
they
we can do.
shareable to the audience, or there's like secret?
Let's not get into that.
Okay. All right. All right. So we got. Let's focus here. Do justice. So we've got people who look like they totally screwed up, and we're doing this. We're giving them due justice because, for one reason, I know if God forbid I ever get into that position, I want my due justice, right? So even though you got the bad guy, supposedly, quote unquote, he needs to have his due justice, which is only fair.
And
then
I think that's the key word, fair.
And then the law will figure out what's right and what's wrong.
Let me just say this. I do want to say, if that happens to me, right? If they want to testify to a lie that I know is a lie, I'm probably going to try to get off. Okay, but there are 3 ways to try to make that happen, and it's a whole Pandora's. It's a whole nother. They've written books on this, so it's not that it's shady. It's just that they've written books on.
Have you ever experienced that? Can I ask that? Have you ever experienced something like that?
No, not really. I've experienced where after the fact, like they say it, and I don't know at the time, but I find out later that it was a lie. And was I bound? I don't think I was bound to come back and clear up the record unless we're back in court testifying again. And luckily that's never happened. Like, it's been a quick hearing. Boom. For some reason we need to get in front of the judge quick. We got in front of the judge and my client lied on the stand, right? But I didn't know anything about it because it's a brand new case, right? And then later down the road I find out that was not true. But luckily we never had to go back to court, so I never got in the situation. Do I correct this with the court or do I change it? But yeah, this happens.
Gosh.
This happens.
Hey, let's flip this around. What if you get somebody and they're convicted and they're not guilty? How does that work?
Ooh.
Yeah, this is why we have the Innocence Project. This is why we go through due process. And so we talked about the police officer in that case. We talked about the length of the follow. I think is what the scenario kind of made up here. Okay, and so then we talked about the other issue. There could be other things like what if the police officer has a personal vendetta against the guy, maybe because of women, maybe over a sports bet. Maybe over just they play basketball and don't like each other.
It's funny you say that. When I was back up in New York, I had an officer do that to me over a woman, and so it was pretty interesting. I was being stalked by this cop. Okay? He's just like couldn't handle it.
Which is a lot of what it sounds like in the case that I'm talking about, right? Right. So in that type of case, the jury can see all this, and yeah, my client did it, but nothing about this was fair. Nothing about this was reasonable, right? And so we got to the point. This is what I was trying to tell you right in the end. A jury, and people don't know this, and I want to get this. If you hear anything from today's show, the thing to take away is juries have a right to negate or what we call nullify the law. You're going to go into a jury service, and you're going to hear these lawyers talk about, can you follow the law? Can you do this? Can you follow the law? You're going to have to commit to doing what the judge tells you to do in the jury charge. You got to do this. You have no other choice. It's illegal not to follow the law. But when it comes down to it, they're not going to tell you. What they're not going to tell you is, if you don't want to follow the law, you do not have to. And if you don't follow the law, there's absolutely nothing they can do about it.
Give us an example, please.
And so to do it from the standpoint of the state's favor is not smart, because the defendant always has a right to appeal this. Okay, but to do it from the standpoint of the state, from the defendant's standpoint, in favor of the defendant. So let's say the jury finds, let's say in the example I gave, what was it, marijuana? I think I said. So let's say you have the person driving around for 20, 30, let's say 2 hours smoking marijuana, and it's no question it's marijuana. And there's just no question, boom, 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 it's a done deal. If the jury wanted to, they could go in and say, you know what? Marijuana should be legal. This is dumb.
So they have pardon abilities.
Exactly. I mean, there's nothing that's a good way to put it in layman's terms. I mean, yes.
Could a jury right from the get-go just sitting there and say, no, this is BS. We don't even want to go this far. Let the guy go. Can they do that?
Well, they have to wait till the end of the trial, but yeah, they can find not guilty.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can find. Yeah. They do it. They've done it. They did it in it was the 60s. There's a couple of famous cases about it. But they talk about it in some of the Supreme Court cases how there have been juries nullify the law as far as slave cases were concerned. Slaves were accused of certain stuff. The jury said, "This slavery is wrong. We're just not into this." And they found not guilty, or they didn't follow the law in the case simply because it was a slave case. Right? This goes back way, and there's nothing they could do. They can't throw you in jail. They can't do anything. There's a.
Hey, what about this one? Because we had talked. I think Trey, you had mentioned this too. A guy rapes his daughter. Not a guy rapes his daughter. Some guy rapes some dude's daughter, and the rape is over, and the guy's away, and the father hunts him down and takes him down. Is that an episode where the jury can say, "I felt for the man"? There's a time to kill, like that movie. There's a time to kill,
yeah.
And they just let him go. Is that?
That's definitely that's definitely why, right? We don't have the posse mentality, right? So because even though the father in your scenario or whoever may have had the posse mentality, right? We don't have the posse mentality because we want to make sure they go through the system. Because I would think, I don't know that they would nullify the law in that situation, but I think that you definitely have a case where you could get the max, which would maybe be death potentially, or 99 years in prison versus 10 years in prison, right? And I think that...
Can't they also say you're guilty and you're totally guilty, you're wrong, but we're going to let you go? What do they call it? Commuting the...
They could say fine. They could say $10,000 fine.
So many ways, man. There's so many ways.
That's what I'm saying. They could...
That's why it pays to get a good attorney, right?
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. There's definitely a punishment issue, right? There's definitely a punishment, right, issue. I mean, you want to go through the process and let the jury hear everything, so that it may be that he's guilty, but just because he's guilty doesn't mean that he's deserving of the maximum.
Is somebody out there, 254-697-6633. Give us a call. Give us some thoughts, questions, opinions on this topic. It's pretty interesting.
Does the judge have like an authority or ability to overrule the jury?
No, absolutely not. That's what I'm saying. A jury can nullify the law, and there's nothing. The state can't even appeal. The state, if it was a criminal case,
now.
if the case was a criminal case, the state would not even be able to appeal it. They would be done. It is what it is.
Does that falls under double jeopardy or being tried for the same crime?
No, the state can't appeal a case they lose. That's why. How?
So I don't know.
It's a not guilty verdict. It's done. Okay, I mean there's no other case now. The criminal defendant can appeal that, right? Because that's their rights on the hook. Okay, they can always do that, and if the jury failed to follow the law in his case, right, if they in the state's favor, yes, you have an issue, right? You have an issue. You have insufficient evidence. You have factually insufficient evidence, right? They can nullify the law from the standpoint of the favorable to the defendant, but whether they can nullify the law in a way that's favorable to the state is highly questionable.
No matter the situation of the individual and whatever it is they're being accused of, would this be an accurate description of a court, a chess game?
Oh yeah, it's not even a court; it's a chess game from day one.
So it has nothing to do with right or wrong, black and white. It has to do with
It's all about right and wrong.
I know, but the black and white turns gray. I've been sitting here with you guys, you and Rick, long enough to know that black and white has turned to gray.
Well, that's not always the lawyer's fault. A lot of that starts with the legislature.
No. I don't mean by the lawyer's fault.
The world is a messy place. There's not going to be very many cases where it is black or white.
Well, I could go to LTC law and say Penal Code 4603 clearly states that signage needs to be a certain way, and now I get a 33-year veteran from DPS saying, well, you know what the Ghostbuster sign means, you know what they're thinking, just don't go in. And I'm like, what kind of attitude is that? That's a whole other story. We got a call. Let's see who it is. Welcome to the show. It's Aaron's High Cap Adventure. Who we got on the line? Hello. Yeah, how you doing? Say that again now?
I said I would have to say if I was on that jury, I'd say not guilty and stand my ground.
And that's a big thing. We talk about to juries in voir dire, and during the course of the case, we talk about holding out. Are you strong enough to stand your ground? Are you brave enough sometimes to do it? Because sometimes saying not guilty is a hard thing to do politically and socially.
I appreciate the call. We're getting a little bit of feedback, so let's cut that down, and then we'll continue on with the conversation. Thank you for the call. If you want to call, if somebody else got a question, 254-697-6633.
That is true. A lot of times you have to stand your ground. I mean, a lot of these guys...
I'll be honest with you, I couldn't understand his question, but you got it. What was the actual question he was asking?
He didn't. He just said if I was on a jury like that, I'd stand my ground and say not guilty.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and I think he's just trying to make a point. Like, yeah, it's difficult sometimes. You've got to actually stand your ground. I want to get one other point out there before I go, if I could, maybe a second takeaway from today, and that would be false confessions. Just because you have a confession, somebody confessing to it, man, don't think, oh well, it's a done deal. I mean, there's so many times you can go back and go on the Innocence Project website, and they have how many cases they've overturned percentage-wise. Now, the number one is, believe it or not, is eyewitness testimony. Eyewitness testimony is the most unreliable source of information that there is. I mean, period, point blank. People think, oh, well, did they see him do it? Well, it's done deal. Oh, dude, if all you got is one eyewitness, and I mean,
hold your thought, because I make that very clear in my class. If you're holding your ground and there's nobody there and you only got one witness, you get one story. But if you're on 5th and Main, the corner of 5th and Main, and hold your ground, and you got 12 witnesses, each one's got a different vantage point, you're going to get a different answer, and you're going to get screwed. So you got to be very careful when you have your witnesses looking at you, right?
Yeah, but I'm in straight identification. How many? You would not believe. It's crazy. You would not believe how many people say like person X did it, and it's person A. I guess they're totally somebody else. I mean, there's so many of those cases. Eyewitness this, and it's different probably if you know the person. Like if your friend is there as an eyewitness, because your friend knows who you are, right? Actually knows, hey, I was there with him on this day. It was him, right? But barring some kind of crazy conspiracy theory, it's probably you, right? Because that's your friend saying that they were with. But other than that, like let's say, false confessions, they make up like the second most, right, reason why people get unlawfully convicted. And you think that sometimes the police don't act just outrageously,
like a coercion.
But they don't. Sometimes they don't have to beat people though to make them falsely confess. Sometimes police are smart. They're smart, dude. I mean, police. When I say that, I'm gonna retract that statement. Just like no, but police make good maneuvers a lot of times. There are a lot of times police make smart moves, and they just get these guys. They just get these guys to say dumb stuff that really is not true, and we can prove that these are false confessions because they'll say, "Oh yeah, I raped the person," because they're scared to death, right? And then we go and we find DNA evidence showing that it was somebody else, and there's a receipt for this guy that he wasn't even in the state. I don't even know how these cases happen, but they happen.
When that happens, and you get somebody thrown in jail for years because. Whatever reason they got convicted, but they're not guilty. How do you make up for that? How does the state make up for that?
There are civil penalties. You can they actually, for somebody that's acquitted on actual innocence, has a right to sue the state for funds. It's not a lot. I mean, what is it? I mean, the funds that they're allowed to have a cap, and I can't remember that number, but they're allowed to.
Oh, I'd be angry.
But the state says, hey, we've got a fund available for you guys. When you get out, if you actually are acquitted based on actual innocence, right? File a petition, right? And we'll help you. We'll help compensate you for some of that time. And that's only fair, right?
I'm surprised that you even have to do that. If they're going through the system, and go, oops, he's innocent. We found out. We need to take care of this guy. Why does he have to fill out the petition? You'd think that the state would go, let's fix up this guy. Let's make him happy.
Well, the state's not going to do your rights for you. They're not going to exercise your rights for you. You're going to have to exercise your own rights.
Okay. All right, the number is 254-697-6633. Trey, you got another angle on this?
I'm still baffled by the whole false confession thing. I mean, I can't, and that's just from a personal viewpoint, I can't fathom admitting to something I didn't do.
Me either, but it happens.
Like,
it's crazy.
I mean, especially something like,
happens.
murder or rape or something like, hey, no, I didn't do that stuff. And then, I mean, they're beating on me with a heavy flashlight. No, still do it. Ouch, that hurts, but no, I didn't do it.
We talk about personalities. We talk about body language, all that kind of stuff. If I'm looking at an individual and you can see this guy is crazy with innocence, he's like, I'm not guilty. You got to be able to read that.
Well, so there's several factors that come into play. And I mean, my girlfriend's always, I talk about her from time to time. She's in pharmacy school. And she's always saying she's always saying what people are doing by not making sense, and how this, and I just keep telling her, like, you seriously overestimate the intelligence of society.
You got that right.
Okay, one of the number one rules, like, is your attorney, stupid people make you money. Okay, okay, and that's just the truth. Like, yes, the people in this room, I don't know that we're geniuses, but I think that there are a lot of people that are not as smart as we are, okay? And there are a lot of people that don't understand some things. And there are a lot of people, especially when you talk about racial, minority type of issues, ethnical issues. You talk about in places where you may have a situation, I mean, how many times we've seen there being a target, right, on a certain individual class or group within the community, and to say that those things don't happen, they do happen.
Bless you, Trey. Yes. You done?
I think so.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
All right.
Yeah, those things happen, right? Those exist, and so if you put some of those together, not the smartest guy in the world, right, and is scared based on some kind of being in some kind of group, and that's not necessarily racial, right? You could have a trailer park that has Mexican, black, white people all in it, but that is constantly targeted by the police. So that could be any race, not necessarily race. Right? So you have that. You have a person that's in a group that's constantly targeted, and then you have that person may be also falling into a minority category, and they may just admit to whatever the police want them to admit to just to get out of there alive. And it may not be a realistic fear, right? The cops may not have been going to do anything, but this happens.
Ross,
It's crazy.
Ross, what makes a good attorney and what makes a bad attorney?
I think a good attorney understands their client's story, and is willing to go in and advocate for that on behalf of that story and tell their story.
I want to ask a question. It's already obvious what the answer is because of you sitting next to me, but does it take time for an attorney to learn all the things? Obviously, you haven't been as long as Rick, but you're aggressive and you're sharp and you know your stuff. But, I mean, is it more what you just said, or is it more you got to know all the little tricks of the law to make it work better for your client?
I mean, there's definitely tricks. Like I said, we talked about the golden nuggets or whatever we did that day. There's definitely tricks, and the whole point to have an attorney is to make sure that you don't get hung up by those tricks bought from another lawyer. Okay, but if you have two good lawyers involved, right, normally it's just going to come down to knowing your client's story and making the best chess moves about telling that story, and making sure that you're able to tell the full story by the time that you get into court in front of a jury or a judge.
Okay, I'm running out of time, so I'm going to do this fast. Later on in the show, I'm going to be doing about a 10-point checklist on how to buy a handgun. I've been doing this for years. I've got it down. I'm very good at it, but I break it down into a simple format of what I give them a card. Here's what you need to do if you're going to buy a gun. Is there something you could say, maybe 5 points that you should ask or look for on an attorney to make sure? I mean, use yourself, because I know you're hungry, you're aggressive, you know the law. I know you do. I mean, I can see it. I mean, when you're here talking, you
Are
just...
they named Benton Ross Watson? Step one.
I mean, I know Rick's one of those guys. He's just like, it's all in his brain, man. He's got these volumes of books.
Years of experience always make a difference. That's the first thing I'd ask. And that goes against me, but like I said, it's not the only factor. Okay, it's years of experience, right? Do you do this kind of law, right? Have you tried a case? Have you tried a case in this kind of law before, or do you know how to try a case? Okay, and then maybe I'd ask, do you usually represent people on my side or the other side? Because if there's a government lawyer for most of their life, that could or could not hurt you. I think it just matters you're going to need to talk to the attorney. Okay, and then obviously number 5 is what's the fee.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So
how stupid were you, and how much is it going to cost?
It may be helpful to turn number 5 to the first one, but I hate to put money on it because an attorney's expensive.
Well, but that's the fact of the matter. So you have to bring that in there.
It is, but that's why I keep it last. I want to, I don't want you to waste your time if you don't think you can afford them at all. That's true too. But maybe, you might want to pay that additional money if you think that he's the right attorney for you.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this segment is sponsored by Copeland & Dodd Krebs Law Firm, and we can't thank them enough. Rick,
yeah,
thank
Rick,
you very much.
dude. Rick.
And
Rick.
We got you, Ross. You're awesome too. So tell everybody how to get a hold of you too.
105 East Main Street, Big Milk on the side. Adding on to the building, actually, might look a little different here the next few weeks. But then you can call me, 254-605-4140. That's 254-605-4140. Or email me at benton@watson.legal. Thank you, Rick Dodd. You the man.
All right, we'll see you on the other side, everybody. That was good, Ross.
All right.
Heck yeah.
Cool. Still think